It's no exaggeration to say that November 2020's election it will be one of the most pivotal in our country's history. But getting as many New Mexicans to vote as possible and getting them to feel confident about voting safely and securely may be harder than ever during this pandemic year. The New Mexico Department of Health has set voting restrictions for in-person voting, while officials are still encouraging citizens to vote by mail through absentee balloting, even if it's not founded in fact. Loss of faith in the U.S. Postal Service threatens to overshadow that message. Indeed, polling locations will be allowed to have 25% of maximum occupancy or 4 voters inside at any one time, whichever is greater. Mobile units will be limited to 2. And voters inside and waiting outside polling locations must maintain 6 feet of distance, of course, with such restrictions. I got to ask, do you think voters who wait until Election Day on November 3rd risk being left out?
Being left out of what? They will get to vote. They will definitely. They must be allowed to vote if they are in line. Mm-hmm. And we are hoping that there will be increased absentee voting and increased early voting, so the crowds on all counts will be reduced. And one thing that the county clerks could do to ease the situation is to use drop boxes. And I noticed in Bernalillo County and in Doña Ana County, they are beginning to use drop boxes for absentee ballots that can be dropped off there. I think that will increase at least the perception of safety for voters to come and to avoid the post office as well, if there are any doubts about that. So, yeah, I mean, I think that we're expecting a big turnout, and it will, as in the primary, and it will work.
Mm-hmm. Dan, what's your sense of the mail-in voting thing? Is this much to do about nothing? We know where the president's at on this and such. The public has another thought. I mean, you look at what's going on here. We're going to be voting in record numbers by mail this cycle.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you mean by mail-in voting, right? If you're talking about absentee voting, I don't think anybody's worried about that. Mm-hmm. I think we start talking about ballot harvesting and openly just mailing out ballots to people based on where we think they should be going. I think there's a real problem with that. So I think we have to separate the two. We've been voting absentee and voting early and sending in our ballots via mail for a very long time in New Mexico, all with little to no fanfare. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's going to change this election. I think where the rub comes is, should we be mailing out ballots just willy-nilly to people based on where we think they live, who we think they are, and should we have organizations going around and harvesting these ballots when we saw what happened in the past when former organizations were doing that in New Mexico specifically and throwing away certain party registrations, not turning ballots in. So I think that the system, the way the system exists today, I think there's plenty of integrity in the system the way it exists today. I think when you try to change that system, that's when folks get a little nervous.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Kathy, I got another question about social media and Facebook and others. You know, there's a lot of pressure at Facebook to do more to combat misinformation and stuff like that. In your view, how important is that this cycle? I mean, do they need to do more? Is this something that just can't do anything about because it just, we got Russians and everybody else, in our business doing this, trying to mess us up here. How important is social media to all this?
I think social media is very important.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely spend a lot of time on social media, and all of us love to, we love Facebook, and we also hate it for the decisions that they make about when we're going to censor, when we're going to try to make sure that there's not disinformation, and then maybe going too far and saying, well, now you can't have any ads or do anything within a week of the election. And I know that there's some stipulations about when they will allow ads to continue. Mm-hmm. But Facebook, social media is very important for how a lot of people get their information. What I do know is that it's not necessarily, I think, going to change the way people vote. Maybe perhaps would encourage them not to go vote, is what some of the literature has said. But I think that that we're going to be using social media for all kinds of things to get information. What we hope is that community-based organizations like the one that I represent will get out there and do a really good job of educating. We use social media to do that, about how to vote, getting people to vote, and trusting the electoral process, and, you know, just increasing that voter registration, and hopefully getting more than 30% of the people in New Mexico who are registered to vote to actually go out and do it.
You just anticipated my next question to Senator Feldman. You know, we could have a record turnout here, again, taking outside mail-in voting and stuff like that. It's not going to be a ton of foot traffic, but I can imagine scenarios where people are out there at 7:10, 7:15, 7:20, and as you mentioned, by law, you still have to be allowed to vote. But I'm talking about what happens before then, about confidence in voting. Is there any danger in your mind about the confidence people have about voting, the integrity of voting? Is there some doubt that folks might have this cycle?
I think that actually those doubts have been fostered on social media in the past by foreign elements, with the idea of depressing the turnout. So I think it's very important what Facebook does. I'm disappointed with the half-hearted measure that they took to include only new ads and only a week before the election. That said, I think it's very important that Facebook is continuing that ban after the election, and has said that they will not spread rumors of one candidate declaring him or herself the winner. What happens after the election here is just as important as what happens before the election. We don't have an election day, we have a season.
Right.
That's an excellent point. That's a point to finish on. Sorry, Kathy, we're out of time right there. Hey, thanks to our panelists for getting up to their elbows in politics as we enter the final stretches of this campaign season.